Fishing in Ocarina of Time normally takes place here, but today we're breaking the game to fish in different places. Places that are illegal, and a lot of them were suggested to me to check out. From lava fishing in Death Mountain to the fight with Dark Link. How about fishing on horseback? It's, very strange. I hope you enjoy this odd look at a normally impossible situation in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. When you're out fishing, you often have a lot of time on your hands while you're waiting for a bite. Enough time to build a massive empire with today's sponsor, Bloodline Heroes of Lithis. Bloodline Heroes of Lithis is a free-to-play fantasy RPG for iOS and Android, where you must collect champions as you build your kingdoms, and then eventually combine their bloodlines through marriage to create legendary heirs. From orcs, demons, dragonborn, and lycans, new legends will be born as you develop your family tree and prepare for war. Champions' genders can be swapped to your preference, and the more powerful their relationship is with one another, the stronger their child will be. Different bloodlines yield different abilities in combat, which give you the edge in battle. There's a lot of clan-based characters to collect, like the Lycanis, who are werewolf assassins, and the Fulgur demigods, who have powerful area of effect skills. If you use my link in the description, or scan the QR code on screen, you'll start the game with both a Karg, a dragonborn clan member who can transform to dragons, and a half-dragonborn, half-demigod hybrid heir to start your grand adventure with. And to top things off, you'll get a $30 starter bonus. Start your adventure today by downloading the game, and a big thanks to Bloodline Heroes of Lithis for sponsoring this video. Hey person watching, I have no idea if you watched the previous video or not, so I'm going to do a very quick recap so you understand what is going on here. So basically, fishing in Ocarina of Time takes place in one place, the fishing pond, and all the fishing assets are loaded in as a bundle. So basically we're taking this package, which includes the fish, the objects in the water, the fisherman, the aquarium, and the fishing rod, and moving it to different maps. And of course, this is going to cause some weird effects. So a lot of people were like, how could you have not fished at the water temple, or Zora's Domain, or all these other water places? I hear you, loud and clear, and that's what we're doing right now. So we're going to the water temple first and foremost. And the water temple has this really tall room that you see upon going into the temple. It spans like 3 or 4 stories, I don't remember off the top of my head, but basically it's a very deep room. And trying to load the fishing assets in here was a bit of a problem, because when you spawn in the fishing pack, the fisherman spawns way down below, out of bounds, underwater. So of course, I throw on my iron boots, I go down below, and I go into the tunnel, and I start talking to the wall, mashing the A button, hitting the Z button, hoping I can begin conversation, and eventually it happens. I'm able to talk to the fisherman, even though he's out of bounds, and he gives me the fishing rod. For some reason, there's a bit of an issue when this happens. When I'm given the fishing rod underwater, well, it sort of breaks the fishing rod a bit. So you cannot use the fishing rod underwater at all. It won't cast. But even if we go to the surface, we'll realize that the fishing rod is now behaving like a sword. I mean, it's perfect for killing stuff. We can take out the enemies up here, no problem. But we want to be able to fish, so we have to do some things first. So we make our way down below, we find our stalker who's been stalking us for 7 years, we follow them up top, we drain the water, and now we can come back and get the fishing rod while we are not in water, which allows us to actually use it like a normal human being. Well, sorta. So there's another issue with the fishing rod that has to do with the height of the water in where the pond spawns in. Now this is something I did not run into in my first video. However, in this video, it is all over the place. Basically, wherever the surface of the water is for the fishing pond, like the layer that isn't actually water, but it's like this transparent thing that the lily pads show up on, that visually, I guess, looks like water, if we're below it at all, it will count us as being underwater. So that means if we try to cast our fishing rod out anywhere on the map, if we are beneath this layer, well, our fishing rod is not going to work. But at least we can try fishing up top. Now there's no water, but the center structure in the water temple is actually holding all the fish, and they're all inside there, and I'm casting my line into the center through the wall. I am getting some bites, but these fish will not leave the center structure. I'm not sure if these side pieces have a collision behind them, and the fish can't go through it, but I can't catch anything. The fish are there, they're taunting me, but I come out of this empty-handed. Regardless, it was fun fishing here, but we gotta move a little deeper now. We're going to go deeper into the water temple and face off with Dark Link. So Dark Link's room is incredible. It's like the most liminal space in Ocarina of Time. You enter this room and it just kind of goes on forever. There's like this weird feeling to this room, and it's a bit unsettling. Now what's actually happening is when you go through this door, the entire dungeon around you just unloads. The collision for the dungeon is still there, you just can't see it. Everything becomes invisible, and they load in this giant water layer that kind of goes on for a very long time. And then they add this reflection, where a copy of Link appears beneath you, but certain things like the fishing rod, which I'll get to later, don't actually show up in the reflection. All the objects in the room are also mirrored to appear beneath the floor, and of course, last but not least, we have Dark Link, who is chilling by the tree at the center. But before we spawn in Dark Link, we need to get a fishing rod. Now we had the rod earlier, but as we moved through the water temple, the previous objects unloaded and new objects would load in with each room we would go to. That means our fishing rod kind of went poof, and we have to go get it again. This task of getting the fishing rod, again, is a pain in the butt because the fisherman spawns at the beginning of the dungeon, distance-wise, even though we're way over here. That means we have to head out of bounds and not unload this room and make our way all the way over to where the fisherman was at the beginning of the map, talk to him, get the fishing rod, and come back. So we do this by basically flying out of bounds and going out into this great sea. We can see the fish tank that holds the prize fish from anywhere on the map. It never unloads, so we can use this as sort of a guide to make our way over to this area, and we can spawn in wooden crates that we can land on so that we can actually talk to this guy and get a fishing rod. So we got our handy dandy rod, and now we got to make it back to Dark Link's room, which is way up there. Now, like I said earlier, the level itself is actually still here. We just can't see it. So the collision for the rooms is here as well. And we can kind of feel our way around the dungeon a bit and then clip through some walls, and then we'll fly all the way back into Dark Link's room and then summon him for the fight. So Dark Link is very cautious about Link with a fishing rod. You know, he just kind of stares at him, and he reminds me of that like SpongeBob meme where it's like caveman SpongeBob and he's like cautiously like approaching Link. Dark Link does not know what this thing is, and he's just circling us, and randomly he'll just like go off running. It's a bit strange, but trying to cast our fishing rod here doesn't really behave like water. It's just, you know, it's just a flat room with barely any water in it. And unfortunately, all the fish are not over here. And this sucks because I would have loved to fish while fighting Dark Link, like at the same time. But we have the fishing tool, and we have Dark Link running on like a dang fool, but we don't have any fish. And all the fish are down there by the fishermen out of bounds. So I channel my inner Wind Waker and I spawn a wooden crate out in the great ocean. And this is gonna be my little boat. I'm gonna sit up here and just fish way out of here. And you can see how far away I am. Like, look how far away we are from Dark Link. He's running against the side of the room trying to get to us, and he has no idea what's going on because we are way out of bounds. So I'm out here chilling and I cast my line into the water, and unfortunately, it does not reach way down where the fish are. No matter what I do, I cannot get my fishing line to reach the fish. So I have to move my crate, basically sink my ship and move it underwater to hopefully be able to cast and get to these fish. Now, of course, hearing that statement, you're probably thinking I'm dumb, which I am, because I can't cast my fishing line if I'm underwater. So I'm in this catch-22 where I can't reach the fish because they're too far away, and I can't get too close because if I get any closer, well, I can't cast my line out to catch them. Just for the heck of it, I even moved the crate like way out of bounds, like beyond where the water ends, and was hoping that maybe for some reason that would help. But no, all of my attempts to catch a fish in the Dark Link room, I guess, am I even in the Dark Link room? I guess it doesn't even count. All my attempts were futile and no fish were caught. This is shaping up to be the most fishless fishing trip I've ever been on. But I'm going to try to change my luck around. I'm going to go fish in the Chamber of Sages. So the Chamber of Sages has always been this sort of weird map in Ocarina of Time. It's like always off limits. You only go there during cutscenes or when you're finishing temples. So for me, I always want to explore this map. And now, many years later, I can actually do that. So what's really crazy about the Chamber of Sages is that during the initial cutscenes that take place when the map loads, gravity is like super crazy. If you were to be walking around at this moment, you would see that the gravity is so low. If you were to jump, you would fly through the air and it would take a long time to fall down. What's really kind of bizarre is this area sort of can kill Link instantly if he tries to go beneath the floor. I was trying to drop through the floor and it would just kill me right off the bat. And when I would respawn, I would actually respawn back in that crystal, except Link would be in his standing animation. And what was kind of interesting is when the crystal would fade out and sort of disperse, the second Link touched the ground, he would be like frozen in place in whatever part of the animation he was in. It's like hitting the ground triggered a landing animation, but it couldn't be played, so the current animation just locked in place. But enough about this cutscene stuff. We're here to fish, so let's get our fishing rod. The fishing guy spawns really far away, but we can talk to him from the center of the room, which is kind of surprising. So we can get our fishing rod, and now it's time to cast our line out. And when we do cast our line out, it's actually a lot different than any other map I've been on so far. There are no fish here. For some reason, and maybe it's a special property of this map, but all of that stuff must have spawned in way down in the void. It's almost like there's a missing element to this map, like maybe the floor or something, because casting your line out makes your line go forever. It was like my fishing rod was like endlessly spewing line out into the void, and it was never gonna stop. The only reason it would stop was I was mashing the buttons to stop the cast. Hitting buttons during your cast can actually cancel your cast in some ways. It makes your lure fall earlier than it would have if it would have gone through with the full cast. But it took forever to reel this in. There is no fish here. There is nothing here. There is no hope. We're in this weird anti-gravity echo chamber, and it's actually very depressing. Like the floor here makes water sounds. Why is there no water? I want to go swimming. I want to go fishing. And even the room around us, on that platform we spawn on, it has walls. So if we try to go beyond that, nothing else in the room can be stood on. I had to spawn another one of my signature crates out on one of the platforms just so I could stand on it. And I was actually trying to steal the fisherman's hat, but I failed and it got stuck in another super long casting animation. And I just basically pulled my hair out. Next up, we have Zora's Domain, and this is something that people were asking for, so we're gonna switch to a kid and then load in the fishing setup. The fisherman loads out of bounds behind the shop, so we would exit the shop and face that wall and start mashing the buttons so we can talk to him. Eventually, we get our fishing rod, and the fish here are very strange. At first, I was thinking, oh cool, I can see the fish, they're down below in the water, this is gonna be easy, this is gonna be fun. But wouldn't you know it? Zora's Domain is a nightmare. So no matter where I was at, I could not cast my fishing rod. And I thought this was interesting because the fish were scattered all around this area. But that's when I noticed that when I approached a fish, it would just start swimming upwards. So much so that all the fish would swim all the way to the top of the cavern, and then they would just merge through the rock and go beyond that. So what I'm thinking happened was the fishing pond adhered itself to the very top layer of the waterfall. But it wasn't even the waterfall because I couldn't cast my line off the waterfall either. Perhaps it was the level of the collision for the staircase beyond the Zora King. Like I had to spawn a crate way above Zora's Domain to be able to even cast my line at all. Like you have all these beautiful fishing spots down below, but the way this loads in, and I can't actually change the way it loads in currently, well, this whole area is off axis. And my fishing rod up here can't make it down below to even fish, so this area is a bust. But Zora's Fountain is a bit different, and I finally have a win there. Now Zora's Fountain would actually be the perfect fishing spot. It is this giant circular lake that's really deep, and there's lots of different ledges you can stand on, there's trees that you can stand on. So I was really curious about visiting this place as an adult because of the ice platforms. You have all these different platforms of ice, some rotate, some move around, but when you step on them, they sort of dip into the water. And I thought this would be really interesting trying to catch fish on them. And if you were to catch a fish on a rotating block of ice, it actually shows something really interesting about how the fish is tracked to Link's hand. So the fish always follows Link's right hand, but it's a bit delayed. As you can see, the fish is lagging behind as Link rotates on this iceberg. But while we're stuck holding this fish in this message, we're actually going to move Link upwards so that the platform beneath him that is moving can get out of the way. And doing so, we can cause Link to plummet to the bottom of the pond while still holding the quote-unquote fish. A second later though, the fish catches up and now we're underwater holding the fish. The text box is preventing us from drowning, which I find pretty interesting. And the second we close out of it, we float back up to the surface. So I tried fishing way up top, like in that secret alcove, but my lure could not reach the water, so I started moving around and trying different areas, like up on the cliff, for example. Again, my line didn't reach the water, But as I got down below and I started fishing on the icy platform that Jabu Jabu would normally be on, the icebergs can be very helpful because a fish will jump up and get stuck on top of the iceberg and start flopping in place. But normally you can't do this, but by restoring movement to Link, we can actually jump down on top of the fish, and the second Link touches the fish, technically we reel it in. And because we jumped, Link has this poker face when he gets the fish. The animation that normally happens was basically canceled by his landing animation, so we have this strange fish accomplishment pose. If we decide to let Link move around after he picks up a fish, we get this really interesting Zelda vlog where the camera is like in front of him, and as he moves around, the fish follows him. I'm really sorry about how glitchy this looks. It's very nauseating, and even trying to control this is a nightmare. But I thought it was interesting. I thought it was kind of neat that we could walk around like this with the camera fixated in front of us, and we can see that the fish is floating. So Zora's Fountain ended up being a positive experience. Finally, we had a place we could actually fish at on this adventure. And next up we have Death Mountain. Now, a lot of people were like, yo, go lava fishing. That's a thing, right? And we're gonna give it a whirl. So we go to the Death Mountain crater, and we immediately have an issue. So the fisherman spawns out of bounds beneath the lava. And I was a bit worried that going beneath the lava at all was going to cause me to phase out and reload the map. So luckily we can go down here and load in a crate, stand on top of it, talk to the fisherman, you know, the usual, and then take our fishing rod to the center of this area. Now, this entire time, I could already tell that something was wrong. I did not hear any fish at all. And the second I casted my line out into the fiery great beyond, I understood why. Similar to the Chamber of Sages, my lure went on forever. I'm not entirely sure what causes this on the map. Perhaps the fishing pond assets are spawning way down below in the great beyond. So far down below that it's impossible to ever interact with it. But we basically have a situation where we cannot fish. So of course that's a bummer, but we're moving on into the fire temple to see if we can get a different result. Now at the start of the fire temple, the door to your right is locked, and beyond that door is this big fiery room with lava all around. Loading the fishing set into here caused a bit of a different result, at least sorta. Out of the entirety of the fishing setup, there was one fish that spawned in that I could see. And this fish was flopping in the lava, and in this state, the fish cannot be caught, because when the fish is hopping around like that, it is not capable of biting your lure. I felt really bad that this fish was flopping around the lava, but unfortunately, we can't do anything in this room, and it's again upsetting. So we push further. We go further into the fire temple, and now we're in the boss room. So upon entering Volvagia's lair, I'm sorry if I butchered the name. I actually never really knew how to say it. Anyways, once we're in the boss room, we load in the fishing set, the fisherman's beyond the left wall. We talk to the man in the wall, and we get our fishing rod. Now, all the fish here spawned on top of the lava, and they're all just flopping around this center island. I was really hoping there would be water here or some sort of area where the fish could swim, but that is not the case. I'm not entirely sure what it is about lava areas, but the fishing package seems to not load in all its things. So I'm looking at all these fish, I cast my line out a few times, and of course it does the same thing, it just falls forever. But that's when I noticed that the boss is actually always present beneath the stage when you walk in the door. The boss is just kind of hanging out down there waiting for the cutscene to start. And we can actually walk inside this center island because the lava floor goes all the way through it. And we can also walk on this area up top if we don't hit the trigger, which is near the start of the island. So Death Mountain and the Fire Temple was a bust, but before we leave, I'm going to trigger the boss cutscene, and I was actually very surprised to see that if you move Link during this initial boss spawn, the animation that happens where the dragon flies all around, the dragon can actually hurt you. The fire from the dragon will actually burn Link if Link is in the wrong position, and I thought that was kind of interesting. It wasn't just a scripted animation, it was something that can actually damage Link, but Link's position during the cutscene is what saves him. Next up, we have the Deku Tree. We're going to the Deku Tree, and we're going to load in the fishing set, and I wanted to fish all the way at the bottom. There's normally these Deku scrubs down there in like this nice pond, but unfortunately, we cannot fish on that level because it's beneath where the layer of the water spawns, so our fishing rod would not work. However, we can fish in the center pond area. Now, I will say, it's actually kind of a pain in the butt trying to fish in here. The waterways are very narrow. There's a lot of areas where they get shallow, which causes the fish to either try to jump out the water or they start flopping. So there's a lot of things that interrupt your line actually getting grabbed by a fish. but because of the way this room is shaped, some of the back pockets of the water in here have a ton of fish. Like, there's so many fish compounded in this small area that I feel like it actually hurts the fishing experience because they're bumping into each other. I managed to snag a fish or two, but I'm never able to actually reel it in. So this fishing area is really cool aesthetically, but it's not the best when trying to actually catch fish. Moving on to Hyrule Field. Hyrule Field is kind of depressing because spawning the fishing set in causes the fisherman to appear right outside the Hyrule Castle gate. And because of this, and because of the way he faces when he loads in, the rest of the fishing pond spawns underneath the castle town. So basically the loading zone for walking into Hyrule Castle Town is where the fishing pond is, that's where all the fish are at, and you're basically casting your line through the walls around the castle town in hopes that you can catch something floating out in the void. I was really hoping it would pick a different location, like maybe one of the rivers that flow around Hyrule Field, but unfortunately, we're just casting a line onto Zombieland, and it's not really that much fun. But this did give me an idea. I have yet to try catching a fish while on Epona. So that became my final mission. At first I went to Gerudo Valley and I tried catching a fish from up above, and after some tinkering I actually got a fish on the line and I was able to get on top of Epona as well. Now the problem with fishing on Epona is that the B button normally makes you pull out your bow, and the B button also is what we use to cast our fishing rod. So we can't actually cast our fishing rod from Epona's back, but we can cast our fishing rod, restore movement to Link, and then climb on top of Epona. And you can reel in a fish while this is happening. Now I have no way of getting the fish to Link because fish cannot actually vertically climb, and there is a great ravine that I'm trying to reel this fish up. So we load in Epona at the fishing pond to make things a bit easier. What's kind of strange is you can be reeling in a fish, climb on top of Epona, back Epona up, and talk to the fishing person at the same time that you're reeling in a fish. I found that really odd. I wasn't aware you could talk to him while also reeling in a fish, because mechanically it doesn't really make sense with the A button being used for both. But when we do catch a fish on top of Epona, Link just has his poker face, as Epona is galloping forward against the pond. Epona cannot go in the pond, it's like a wall. And at this point, if we restore movement to Link and Epona, well, we'll see that the fish behaves similar to a green mushroom from Mario 64. This fish is like a heat-seeking missile that will always follow us, and it's very slow, it's actually very delayed. But it's kind of neat to see as we have the camera out in front of Link and is just following us around the pond. Now, on this adventure, we had a lot of failures, but we also discovered some pretty interesting things. You know, they say it's not about the end destination, it's the journey you took to get there, and we went on a heck of a journey to try to get this stuff to work. And I'm happy with that. I had a lot of fun doing this. I hope you enjoyed this video. And of course, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching, and cheers.